So, Berto, I always love podcasting with you, particularly when I'm not like locked in on a deep dive set of notes and I'm like anxiously trying to manage everything. It just feels good to hang out with my best friend and talk about incredibly sensitive topics.
It makes me feel nervous because I don't know what you're going to ask, and I don't know what to say.
Wait, you have nervousness about that?
Oh yeah, because what?
Yeah, Berto, Mr. doesn't know what to say and is socially anxious. All right, anonymous listener. Oh, by the way, this is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I am an ADAT quality control engineer.
But honestly, Berto, I just want to double down and say, let's stop and smell the roses.
Wow.
We are professional podcasters.
Yes.
Almost 17 years together.
Oh my God.
And people, like what we do.
Yes, it's incredible.
Enough of them, anyway.
Yeah.
Or enough of them are hate listening or something. And,
downvote.
we're living the dream.
Yes.
And we got to hang out and shoot the shit and have a good time. I don't know.
It's amazing. You're right. I think it's like, I've told you this multiple times, but I would have still done it and still be doing it if we were still only had 2 listeners.
Well, as evidenced by the fact that we only had 2 listeners for probably like 7 years. Yeah.
That's true.
We're just that narcissistically inclined enough. All right. Anonymous listener, he says, hello, I am a 30-year-old heterosexual male that sometimes enjoys watching Loli pornography. Do you know what Loli?
Yeah.
What is Loli? Am I even pronouncing it right?
Lolly?
Okay.
No, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking.
Do you know what it is?
I've only seen it spelled out in 4chan, so I don't really. But yeah, it's like, it's where there's anime, where there's like a, essentially pedophilia. But there's like, or it's not necessarily because the girl could be 18, but she looks very young, or the boy looks very young.
Right.
Yeah.
So he says, hello, I'm a 30-year-old heterosexual male that sometimes enjoys watching lolly or loli pornography. I don't fantasize about real children ever.
I think it's because it's from Lolita, right? So Loli.
Okay.
Lolly. Yeah.
I'm wondering if, so he clarifies, it says, I don't fantasize about real children ever.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if watching this stuff makes me a pedophile. Thank you and hope to hear back from you, seeing how hard it is to find professional thoughts on this topic. End of email. So he's saying it's hard to find professional. So Berto, as a non-professional, what do you think? Does this make him a pedophile?
So I have a couple thoughts. One, I don't do this a lot, but sometimes I have looked for famous 80s cartoons I loved, and there's like drawn porn versions of it. Like, so
He-Man's friend,
like He-Man, exactly.
Ariel.
Or Shaggy and Velma or something, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not proud of it. It's coming out today here. But does that mean I want to have sex with He-Man, or I want to have sex with cartoons, or does it mean I want to have sex with 70s stars? No, it's just a weird curiosity thing. It's like...
Actually, I did not expect you to... I never knew this about you, Bert. So when it comes to Ariel, she codes as an adult. I would say she codes as a 30-year-old woman or something, right? Right? Wouldn't you say that?
Wait, who's Ariel?
Isn't that He-Man? His girlfriend?
No.
The lady?
No. Oh, my God.
Or am I thinking of Thundar the Barbarian?
You're thinking of Thundar.
Okay, I'm always getting those mixed up. But
She-Ra is the other one, and then Tila is his female friend.
Oh, okay. They code as definitely adults.
Yes.
But
definitely.
Velma, are you just throwing that out as an example, or is that
no,
one you've actually... Okay,
yeah.
So Velma codes as possibly underage.
Teenager. You're right. I mean, they were, well... Yeah, that's unclear now that I think
it is
about
unclear. I don't know if they ever, but she could be 18.
That's true.
But she could be 16.
Why are they allowed to just go on this mystery machine everywhere? Okay, fair enough.
You
but
pesky kids. We're
not sure.
You pesky kids.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
For you to...
Technically, that's underage porn, right?
I mean, at the very least, it's a young character
right.
in the nude or having sex, that kind of thing. And it's very akin to, although I would say that I don't think I've ever seen Loli. Well, answer me this, Berto. In your awareness of Loli porn, is it that it's the way you described it, where like it's a Velma, it's a Japanese manga anime character who could be 18 but also could be 13? Or is it sometimes where it's clearly this is a minor?
I don't know if there's a range. I guess there's probably a range. But when, I think 15, however many years ago, like 15 years ago when I used to frequent sometimes the 4chans, those are some of the threads there's two types of threads I would always scroll right by. One of them were any depictions of like dead people or things like that. I just never had an interest in real. I like horror movies. I don't like real stuff like that. And the second was anything to do with underage things. Those little Loli cartoons, I'm sorry, it's obvious what it is. I'm not saying
children.
I'm not saying it's like it's as bad as like real life. Of course, that's like the worst. I'm just saying there's no mistaking it from my perspective.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas
so with Velma, that's not.
No, she looks. And plus, they make them all look extra voluptuous. Like she's like bursting out. Like it's just. They're at least 25 in these cartoons.
So, okay. So this analogy of Velma is not a direct. Not a direct analogy.
Right. What I was trying to get at was that. And I picked cartoons because we were talking about cartoons, but I could pick really any one of my, again, disclosing TMI, right? Spoiler alert. One of my frequent searches is literally I type in nude boat GIF.
What?
Nude or naked boat GIF. And what I get back are GIFs, little animated sequences of naked women on boats in various situations.
Why do you look at?
Well, so you should. Do I want to have sex on boats? Like, is that my dream? Well, no, I don't really want to do anything like that. It's just one day I happened to see one where they were on a yacht in a sunny day and they're like having sex, and I thought, oh, that's kind of hot. And so then later I
specifically on a boat.
Yeah,
like a dinghy or a yacht.
No, it's like one of those like little yachts, a speedboat, or the thing they would take on like Lake Sammamish or something.
Oh, okay, like a ski.
Yeah, and then it's sunny and it's not huge. It's like
water skiing kind of boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Speedboat. Yeah, what do you call those little things?
Yeah, I don't know.
We used to have a name for them. It was a brand, like a sea brand.
Okay.
Or anyway.
So does that mean I really no?
That's a very interesting search.
Yeah,
and GIFs too.
Yeah, it GIFs. Yes.
Why GIFs?
I like the animation. You see them moving.
Yeah.
But I don't. But it's not as committed as like, okay, I'm gonna go to a site where it has a whole movie.
Whole video.
I
see. Yeah. Certainly, there is a huge gap for the vast majority of people when it comes to their kinks or their turn-ons versus what they would actually want to do or what they would actually enjoy in real life, for sure. But I'm trying to think of an analogy for you and me in terms of child cartoon.
Yeah, this is tricky,
like Lisa from The Simpsons, or if I'm trying to think of another girl.
I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable. So to flip this around the other way is like there's many things that even if, like, let's say I walk in on one of my friends and they're watching something and it's like, well, it's just my kink. I could imagine many kinds of things they could be watching. And still, let's say they're all cartoons where I wouldn't be okay with it. So
what do you mean?
Well, as an example, I think I wouldn't be okay seeing depictions of pedophilia, even if it was animated.
What do you mean you wouldn't be comfortable? What are you saying?
Well, I guess at the very least, I would leave the room.
Are you saying you would stay if it was nudity on a boat? You'd like hang out?
Yeah, he's like, hey, what's up, buddy? I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is, I don't know. Like it would definitely make me think like, whoa, what's going on here? So I do think, I guess it is in a different category. And maybe I'm talking from both sides of this argument, because on the one hand I'm saying, look, I don't literally want to be on boat, but I am attracted to women, and the naked women on the boat look attractive to me.
Yeah.
The Velma in the cartoon, she's very voluptuous and looks like an adult hot woman that I'm attracted to.
Well, the boat turn on is not a good analogy.
Exactly. So what if I
because if you take that woman on the boat and put her in your bedroom or something, then it would still be a turn on, right? So it's just that and if it somehow came to pass that you were single and you were on a yacht or a
then
ski
maybe
boat,
that would happen.
Then So this isn't
and
isn't a good analogy.
Very good point. So now what about this one? Let's say I had a kink where I like watching cartoons. Again, it's all cartoons, but it's one person's killing the other one while they have sex. And so this is I need to have. That's illegal. They're adults, by the way, but that's illegal.
They're acting it out.
Yeah.
They're depicting.
It's cartoons.
Oh, it's cartoons.
Yeah. It's cartoons, and they're adults, so they don't even look. They code as adults.
But it's still a horrific.
It's a horrific thing, and it might be bloody,
life.
like they're chopping and stuff.
Yeah.
Now look, I like bloody cartoons, so I guess it is interesting, because you say, like, wait, why does the sex part matter? What if you're watching a very bloody cartoon where someone decapitates someone else?
Well, answer the question. What do you think? What's the difference?
Well, maybe the difference is, like, what are you glorifying? Maybe that's what it is for me. Like, for example, when I watch a bloody cartoon, I am not, unless, I guess if the good guy is the one doing the bloodying, I guess I'm glorifying it. So what if the good guy, it's kind of hard. It's a hard one. I don't know. Because, on the one hand, I do believe, I didn't believe this when I was younger, but I do believe that that the more we obsess over certain things and we keep feeding only that to our brain, I do think it has an effect on our psychology. At least that's been my experience.
Meaning it can lead to behavior. Is that what you're saying?
At the very least, it can lead to unhealthy obsession.
Meaning an addiction?
Yeah, maybe, or yeah. For example, well, just take video games. Like when I was playing an MMO that was very addictive, and I did it, the more I did it, the more addicted I got, and then I would go days, like a whole day without, the whole night without sleeping, and then the next day I would miss work just so I could play. That's not good. That's not healthy. And so what I would have told myself would be like, hey, you like the game, that's okay, but you gotta like set limits or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm going to speculate that, I don't know, the area that your mind is in right now, having been given this question without any prep, by the way, that you are uncomfortable with lolly porn and you're trying to find some way of saying, I don't know if I'm on board with this.
I started
and you're now, I would say, in a dubious manner, which is fine because you're thinking on the fly here, equating what you're uncomfortable about is that it could become a problem in the same way that an MMO could become a problem, but that shouldn't create, if someone said, I'm really into MMOs, you wouldn't say like, whoa, like what if it gets out of control? You'd just be like, great, you're into MMOs, who cares? So I would investigate your discomfort a little more. Do you have any more thoughts along those lines?
Okay, that's totally fair. I don't. What's funny is when we started the question and the conversation, my first thought was that, hey, I have looked at things that I'm not really into. Like, I wouldn't literally want someone to dress up as Velma or have sex with a cartoon or any of these things, but I'm still into it. So I came at from that side. So therefore, if someone is
are important things to explore.
Right. And if someone's looking at a thing where it depicts someone that's young having sex with an adult, but it's a cartoon, I was coming at it from like, oh, maybe that's not terrible. I don't know. But then as we kept discussing it, I remembered that I personally really dislike that kind of porn or that depiction.
Describe dislike.
The lolly, meaning it. I get an aversion to it. I think these people, there must be something wrong with these people
that would watch it.
Yeah.
So what are you saying is wrong with them?
I guess they must really be pedophiles, or they must really like, or they must want to do this for real, I guess. Which I realize I'm being hypocritical about, but as I'm examining my feelings about it, maybe that is what comes up in my head.
Okay.
That I say, like, because I remember being on 4chan, and anytime I would see one of those threads, be like, these freaking degenerates, and I would just scroll by.
Yeah. What if it was demonstrable that an individual watched this porn and only watched that kind of porn, and they never had an impulse to actually even think about, let alone abuse a child? Would that be okay with you?
Probably. One thing I'm not sure of is the societal impact of producing things that are depictions of things that are wrong. And I'm not sure, because I hypocritically consume plenty of that. Like I said, I love violent things. I love, violence is generally not. But so the immediate answer to your question is, if you could show me, like, look, in general, this doesn't mean anything. It's just some preference they have for cartoons, sexual cartoons of this nature. Then this is why my first instinct was to say, like, I don't know, people are into weird things. Doesn't mean that they're, but it'd be hard for me not to, in the back of my head, be like, but I still don't feel good about this.
Okay. Well, I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Is this individual a pedophile? The emailer?
I wouldn't, and it's just a definition thing. I guess I'm going to define being a pedophile as someone who, at the very least, wants to have sex with underage people.
Okay.
If he or she, if they are saying, hey, I don't want this at all, I'm just interested in these cartoons, then I certainly wouldn't define that person as a pedophile.
How could someone be turned on by watching minors depicted in cartoons and not be turned on by actual human children?
Well, one simple pathway would be, like, the visual stimulation of the thing might be appealing. Like, it looks sexual and there's a power dominance thing going on or whatever. But because I know no one's really being harmed, then I'm okay to be turned on by it, I guess.
Okay.
Similarly, I suppose, I'll give you an example.
Actually, let me just chime in because before you move forward, is that there are people who role play as children or role play as infants even.
Okay.
And will have that as a part of their role play. And you could argue, and I'm not arguing this, I'm just saying that you could argue that lolly porn is that, because you have adults making content, and the voice actors, I would assume, are adults, right?
Right.
I don't know.
I guess. I don't know.
I mean, or at least
I hope so.
it better be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, to have children.
Yeah, now we're back to a problem.
Yeah, but if it's adults, which my very limited understanding of at least the landscape of voice acting within the anime world, non-porn anime, is that unless it's really important that the voice is like authentically a child, it's usually an adult that has a very childlike voice. Like Bart and Lisa, these are adults that are that have always been adults well into their adulthood when they were. So, it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so it could be argued that cartoons are just that. And for people that are role playing like that, for a lot of them, they would never want to have sex with an actual infant. You know what I mean? So it's the way you described it in terms of the themes that are tapped into that are a turn on, the power or the forbidden love aspect of it. Those are compelling turn-ons for some people.
When I was in college, me and some friends, including my buddy Ron, who passed, we watched Legend of the Overfiend and La Blue Girl. And both of these are Japanese anime movies that are hyper-violent and hypersexual. And it's certainly always left up to debate, but the protagonists, the women protagonists look definitely on the young side, But either way, the scenes always involve these like tentacled monsters having very alien-looking intercourse with these women, and in very I I don't know, power dominance kind of ways, right? Now, I wouldn't necessarily say like this wasn't like particular a turn on, because it was more like we were like, what the hell are we watching here? But, you know, we watched more than one of those movies. And so...
And as an asterisk, those tentacle porn scenes are often very rape-coded.
Well, I didn't realize...
If it's not a flat out...
I didn't realize at the time, but absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I guess... Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I knew at the time, but I do know that at the time we were, you know, I hate to say it, we were like, these crazy Japanese, you know, what are they doing? But this is LOL, and let's watch this. Ooh, there's another one. We'd go to Scarecrow Video, and we found like, I think we watched like 2 or 3 of these. And it was exotic and weird, but so, you know, I would certainly resent if after someone found out I watched those, they're like, oh, I see, so you're a rapist and a pedophile, right?
Were you using it to get off?
No, it was not that kind of thing. But it was funny, which I see how it would not be funny.
So on one layer, it's the consuming of that form. Okay.
Like, but because I could see, so if you take away from the sexual part, but even just the fact that I'm like, oh, this is so funny, right?
Yeah.
I could see people being like, how can you find that funny? That's horrible. Look how grotesque it is. They're basically raping, like, right?
And what message are we supporting?
Yeah, exactly. So I could totally see that argument.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the question you're asking, anonymous listener, is, are you a pedophile? And the first thing we have to do is define what is a pedophile. Now, for many people, they will say, well, there's an obvious answer to that. Do you have an answer to that, Berto?
It's kind of what I just said, which is if they at the very least want to have sexual interactions with underage people.
Yeah. That's a good, quick thing. We have a definition in our DSM, our most recent 5TR version, which I will read right now. The first criterion is over a period of the last 6 months, which is usually a common beginner of these sort of criteria. Over the period of the last 6 months, meaning that it isn't just all of a sudden or 10 years ago, right? Recurrent, intense sexual arousing fantasies, urges, or behaviors. So recurrent, it's frequent. Intense, it's not just like a minor turn on. So recurrent, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, urges, or behaviors. So you have fantasies, you have urges, or you're acting on it. Meaning that you could just have fantasies and not behaviors, or urges, involving sexual activity with a prepubescent child or children, meaning that it's prepubescent, generally 13 years or younger.
But so like if they're fantasizing about a 16-year-old, it's not?
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, there's different terms.
I realize it's just a definition. I just didn't know.
Well, it is stated this way because in some societies, the age of consent is lower, and we can absolutely talk about the safety of that and the exploitation and the wisdom of that, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing magical about like, if a woman looks attractive at 19 to a person, at 18 they might still look attractive. Even at 17 they might still look attractive. That's very and meaning that they might still already have all their woman characteristics, right? So that person's not being attractive to someone that looks like a child, even if in their state it's illegal for them to have sex with that person. Yeah.
There's a lot of things we can get into. There's a lot of angles to this, but one that I will just very briefly say is that you can have someone of any gender, of any sexual orientation, who is shown a picture of someone who's 14, but they don't know that the person is 14, right. And the person looks like they might be 25 and is built like an adult, has a body of an adult, post-puberty. Right. And that individual just looks at the picture and internally just notes that it's a turn on.
Right.
That is a very different thing
right.
than if you show obviously a prepubescent individual or an infant, for example, and that person internally notes to themselves, I am turned on by that picture. That is a very different scenario.
Yeah.
So we can say that a 35-year-old having sex with a 14-year-old is illegal and wrong and psychopathic and harmful and despicable. But for a 35-year-old to look at a 14-year-old and not know the age and have some kind of thought, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about recurrent, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, urges, or behaviors, even just fantasies, right? Even just the very thought of it. So in terms of the DSM definition, we need to delineate because it's a disorder. It's a disorder to be turned on by children.
Right.
If you are turned on by that picture of that 14-year-old that might be 25, you don't have a disorder. You just have to make sure that you don't have sex, and you probably don't want to have sex with 14-year-olds because you don't want to have romantic conversations with a 14-year-old because they're 14, right? But the fact that you have some noted thought of attractiveness to this person is a completely, and when people talk about this kind of thing online, there's a very, and it's what you said is your definition of a pedophile included a 35-year-old who would have a fantasy of a 17-year-old.
That's true, and that's not fair.
Which is not pedophilia. It's wrong. It's illegal. Should not happen. It's abusive, and I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But it's not pedophilia.
Right. No, I hear you. I'm kind of thinking a very grotesque analogy would be, imagine I show you a picture of like a delicious, like nice steaming steak. You could see sizzle. You could even hear the sizzle. And I'm like, doesn't this look good? Yeah, that looks great. That's human flesh.
You disgusting.
You're a cannibal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good analogy, actually, bro. That's good.
Wow.
Provocative.
For once.
Provocative.
Usually I'm like, imagine you have a Star Wars Lego and I show you a picture of a...
You have good analogies. All right, the next criterion is the individual has acted on these urges or the sexual urges or fantasies are causing marked distress or interpersonal difficulty. Yeah. So let's break this down. Now, this might depart the shores for some definitions, maybe even mine. But in terms of the DSM, if you've acted on these intense sexually arousing fantasies of children, generally prepubescent, generally before the age of 13, then yeah, you're a pedophile. But even if you've never acted on them, and the fantasies and urges are causing distress, then you qualify. But if you've never acted on them and you have urges and fantasies, but they don't cause you distress, meaning that that you're never going to act on it and it isn't causing any impairment at work or in your family life or in your personal life, then according to the DSM, then you don't qualify for pedophilic disorder. Now, you might be labeled in the clinical realm as a pedophile, but you don't qualify for a disorder. Because in order for you to have a disorder, there has to be some kind of harm or some kind of distress.
Okay, so is it kind of like, you're being interviewed by your therapist or something? It's like, when I see a young person, I have sexual thoughts. I generally tell myself to ignore them and then I move on. And I've never acted on it, and I certainly don't like pursue them or anything like that. But it happens, and that happens frequently.
Right.
Is that where in this case they'd say like, okay, then you don't qualify for
you don't have a disorder.
But
you would be clinically defined as a pedophile.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between the clinical definition and then the disorder.
There's a difference between the clinical definition of a pedophile and the clinical definition of a pedophilic disorder. Yeah. So I've interviewed recently someone just like that, a non-offending, minor attracted person, a no-map, who has a ton of confidence, according to him, this is his account, that he would never act on it. He's around children. He has his own children. He's a father. And doesn't even engage in a lot of thoughts about it because he has managed to attenuate that urge to such a point where it just doesn't pop into his head very often. You know what I mean? And just being attracted to minors does not mean that you have a compulsion, and certainly doesn't mean you have a compulsion to abuse your own children. It can mean that for sure, but it's not automatic the way that people talk about it in society. So the last criterion is that the individual has to be at least 16 years of age, and they have to be at least 5 years older than the child or children that they're attracted to.
So a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old. Okay.
It would count.
Yeah.
But a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old technically would not count as a pedophilic disorder. Okay, so getting to your question, anonymous listener, are you a pedophile? Well, the definition of a pedophile could include what you are being turned on by. It's possible to include your experience as an individual that would be defined as a pedophile, because for a lot of people, they would not be turned on by those depictions,
right?
By lolly porn that was clearly prepubescent, right? What I think you're really asking is, am I a sicko, or am I at risk of harming children, right?
Yeah.
You're 30 years old and you're like, is there something wrong with me, or should I be wary of actually harming children? Should I keep children at arm's length, that kind of thing? And of course, given your propensity, I would keep an eye on that, right? For sure. But it's not an automatic thing. Someone can be turned on, as Berto debated, we went down a debate rabbit hole with him earlier. And, there's a lot of differences between things that turn you on. And you were saying, anonymous listener, that you watch a lot of porn, and lolly porn is a part of it. You say you sometimes enjoy watching that. So I'm going to take a guess and say that it's just a small minority of the overall porn that you watch that doesn't involve any sort of implication of a younger person. So there's that. But there's a lot of debate about this topic, and different cultures are going to see this differently. Different people are going to see this differently as to whether or not you're a sicko, or are you at risk of harming children. And there is a fair amount of research in this area. It's hard to research, but there is research around this, not only around can this result in someone building an attraction that can lead down that road of them being compelled to harm children, which is the assumption, but it's not a fair assumption all the time. Can that happen? Absolutely. Usually for people where that does happen, there's a lot of other things going wrong in their life. If someone is, because like Ted Bundy talked about.
I know. I was about to say, think about the biggest experiment has been run in humans with the proliferation of the internet, and we have now concluded definitively that no, porn does not lead to psychopathy.
Right. Doesn't lead to harming anybody.
Otherwise, we'd have like 6 billion psychopaths.
Right. It can for some people.
Right.
If your life isn't going right, or you do have some psychopathic urges, or you have a lot of anger and rage at, there's something going wrong, then yeah, it can, but it's not the reason. The reason is that the foundation was there, and the pornography was just like a something of a factor that led down that road. Anyway, So the other question is it wrong? And Berto went into this as well. It's like, well, can the images harm? Is the making of them harmful? And these are important questions to ask, because for that media to be out there, what is it telling society? Is it giving permission for that? Might someone who is a minor attracted person see something like that and see acceptance of that, and see that it's not illegal, or see that it's acceptable in society? Might that be a justification for them to harm children? Maybe.
I also wonder, given that when I was 12, I didn't have access to porn at all. The only porn I saw was someone brought a porn magazine to school one time, and we all crowded, and I caught a brief glimpse of something, right? Nowadays, 12-year-olds in most households with internet, I mean, even if the parents have safety things or whatever, they're probably going to have access to a lot of things. And so I worry not just about this stuff, but I worry in general, what's the effect of a child seeing all sorts of hardcore, violent, abusive, let alone lolly, all these things in a developing kid's brain, right? In my mind, you probably get traumatized. So
Well,
You know?
we've looked into this, and it's hard to say because we're talking about causal relationships and human variety, and also asking people to remember and self-disclose what they've experienced, because we can't spy on children as they look on the internet, and track them for years and see if there's any kind of outcome. And there's a lot of reasons why you would have problems later in life sexually or behaviorally, and you can't tease out that one factor. But we do know that there are many people who have been harmed by overexposure to pornography. Usually the kinds of experience we're talking about, though, is like what Josh Powell went through with his dad, Steve Powell,
Sure.
who would have pornography just laying around, and Steve Powell would even purposely expose his children to pornography. And we don't know if it's directly related or if it's just one of the factors, but obviously Josh Powell killed his wife and also eventually killed himself and his kids. So there's that. And Josh Powell's brother, apparently, because of a social worker visit, had a lot of behavioral problems, including severe sexual violent urges. There were like these posters in his room. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But children can be harmed in that way, but also children can be harmed by just having things happen to them. Now, for children to, like for yourself to come across a magazine at school with a bunch of kids, or to be at a sleepover at a friend's house and the friend's like, hey, let's look at this website. And you look at it for, 5 seconds and you're like, ew, and then that's it. That's a different scenario because hopefully the kid is not being coerced into it. They're not being harmed. It's just a silly little thing.
Totally.
And it all just depends on one's experience.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of like the kids that go on 4chan and have been going on for the last, decade or so.
Right. And so there's another aspect of just rotting one's brain.
Yeah. And it's not just the imagery, it's the discussions. It's the whole, like it's no coincidence, I think, that there is this whole like weird, creepy, gross manosphere online of people who are now men who 10 years ago were kids on 4chan and Reddit. And
things. And again, it's a grand experiment, and we haven't seen the kind of paranoid outcomes that people were thinking. Generally speaking, is there a negative effect? There seems to be some for some people, like having a distorted view of sexuality and of women, right? Because women are often depicted in negative ways. And there are reports of that, and there does seem to be somewhat of an effect. But when you actually look at large populations of young men, say in their 20s right now, who are having sex or who are dating, there can be some difficulties, but it's not dire. There's a lot of health, and pornography has a positive effect as well, because in a world in which there's very little guidance and very little normalization or sex positivity, porn runs the gamut. There's a lot of different types.
Not 4chan, man.
Not 4chan, but I'm not talking about 4chan. I'm talking about just general pornography searches. For the listeners out there, you might not like any porn, or you might be opposed to it, but that's a different topic, And for some young people, they will say, and this research will show this, that they will claim and report, and there'll be effects that can be looked at under larger groups of people, that exposure to porn actually helped them to understand their bodies, understand sexuality, give them permission to be their sexual orientation, that kind of stuff. And it's complicated, there's all sorts of porn out there. So the thing is that when it comes to lolly porn, might that be affecting some people? Maybe. But
that community, because it's the porn, it's the images, but there's a whole thing where it's essentially you're encouraged to look at the world as like who cares?
You're talking about 4chan, though, which is a thing.
And but that's because Loli has always been huge on 4chan.
Yeah, but I don't know this, but I was under the assumption that for many, I don't know what percentage of people that look at lolly porn, they're not on 4chan. they're on some other Asian site or some dark web. It could just be random images, you know what I mean? And so if we just look at that. Now, what I'll also say is there's a fairly big debate within the non-offending minor attracted persons community about whether or not these cartoon images are moral or not, or helpful or not, because there is some research that shows that when someone has this as an outlet, it actually can curb their urge. Whereas there is some research that also seems to indicate that for some people, it can grow the urge.
Right.
I think it's a case-by-case basis. For some people, abstinence is the answer, that they just have to completely distance as far as, for some people, they have to basically become asexual because they have a very narrow turn on. And so they have to just divorce sexuality completely.
Right.
Or even if half of their turn on is minor attracted, they have found that to even engage in fantasy or acts with adults that are consenting, it opens that door to their overall sexuality, which can start leading to those fantasies, which starts leading to the urges, So it's, take it from me that's worked occasionally with people like this, but also I have colleagues and have looked at a lot of the research. Again, it's in 50 years, we'll have a better picture of this, but it's kind of case-by-case basis. So now, might we say, I don't give a shit if some people benefit? They need to figure out some other way of managing this. Even if it's just 10% of the people who consume this are increasing their likelihood of harming children, I don't care because the consequences are too high. And for the people that are benefiting, so to speak, from lolly porn, they need to figure something else out. If that's the only way for you to not harm children, then let's just put you in prison right now.
Yeah.
Because if you're that close to harming children, harming my children, for example, then fuck you. Let's put you behind bars. That kind of. So there's different points of view on this, but I want to be clear that the primary concern for me and what I recommend people really focus on is harm to children.
Sure.
It's not just that it's icky, or it's not just that I don't like what it's associated with, or it doesn't make me comfortable, or I don't like to look at it, or I don't like to think about it out there. That's all just moralizing. That's not okay. When people think that way, very bad things happen in our society. So we have to focus on harm to children. So does lolly porn result in harm to children? Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves, and those are the questions we should be hanging our opinion or our take or the law or our approach to. You know what I mean?
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, let's take a break. We get back. Another email. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, back from the break. Annual patron Heather from Madison, I'm guessing Wisconsin. She says, "Hello, fantastic podcast team.
Woo!
I'm almost caught up with every available podcast episode, and I've been noodling about so many of their topics," meaning the topics of our episodes. "Most recently, I was rewatching the mainline Star Wars movies after just hearing the Duggar deep dive and the Ruby Frankie deep dives, and so much just clicked for me at once that I felt I needed to share. I'm an ex-Mormon molecular biologist. I served a mission and everything.
Wow.
And I'm polyamorous, transgender, and I'm a single mother of one. And so much of my life has felt like fighting the Empire and the Jedi at the same time. No system has fit me, so I've struggled to build my own from the pieces of what I have been given: religion, morality, gender, monogamy, and it's just so hard." So just chiming in, I think what she's saying is that the Empire was the Mormons, but non-Mormons weren't inviting either.
Yeah, or because, the Jedi are like a religion, or they are a religion in a way. So it could be also that, and then society could be the Empire. I don't know.
Yeah. Going on. My epiphany was about how this struggle to build a better system is something we idealize in the media, art, society, et cetera, and yet is so difficult to do that we often just don't try. watching Elder Luke, his exhaustion and resignation just resonated with me. Oh, that's interesting. So I think what she's saying is Luke, post episode 6 was trying to recreate the Jedi Order, and it seems easier said than done, right? When you start running up against the responsibility of fostering a student with such power like Kylo Ren. I will say that the original storyline, or at least the broad strokes that was presented in episode 7 and 8, could have worked if it was handled differently.
Yeah. I just got into a huge debate about this, parentheses, by the way, with a friend of mine. We were talking about we were talking about episodes 7, 8, and 9, and it started with I was like, I liked episode 7. I still think I like episode 7. But then when I saw episode 8, I sort of liked it other than the casino sequence. But I was definitely, and then what they were saying is it's just all those insufferable online trolls that just couldn't get over that there was a black stormtrooper and stuff. And I'm like, no, right. But no, there were those, you have to admit, huge swaths, right?
But they were almost non-existent. At the very least, I don't remember hearing any major movement with episode 7. And Finn is the star of that first movie.
They were already in episode 7. They were upset that she was like what they call a Mary Sue. They were upset that,
but it wasn't a loud voice. At least I don't remember.
They were upset that there was a black stormtrooper. But okay. But the bottom line is,
I don't doubt that.
This is what they were complaining about. They were saying that the only reason people don't like episode 8 is because the people that don't like episode 8 is because of these. They hate DI. They hate woke. And I'm like, whoa, listen. I have some, and so I was explaining that when I saw the Luke depiction in episode 8, my heart broke because that's not my Luke, right? And I was trying to explain that. But it is interesting because they were giving this perspective of listen, it was kind of interesting. It's like he tried, and then things weren't like you're saying, weren't as easy.
Yeah, I give this a lot of thought because it's not only with episode 8 and 9, but it's also with the TV shows what was the most recent Star Wars TV show?
The name of the other Jedi. She's
the one with
Tilak, right? The Twilight. I forgot.
Oh no. Oh, you're thinking of with Ahsoka, but
Ahsoka.
I'm thinking of the other one. Anyway, there's been a lot of talk of this, and what I'll say is both are true. There are people that will always be there that will just attack anything that doesn't involve white men, heterosexual men, white cis heterosexual men. That is there. And so the attack on episode 8 is in part that. But another element of the attack on, especially episode, when we start getting into episode 9, that kind of stuff, are people like you and me that are saying it's terrible writing.
Yeah.
and to claim that we're sexist or racist when Princess Leia was one of the triumvirate of the original movie in 1977. And
we loved Lando too.
And at no point did any of us lament Lando or Leia.
No.
Ever.
Leia's one of the best, strongest female characters in cinema.
And, when there's good writing, there's good writing.
Yeah.
Rogue One, for example, is a woman at the center of that. No, I don't hear anyone screaming about it's a woman, and a Hispanic guy, Andor. It's the now. Were there elements of that? Sure, but when I say I like Rogue One and I like episode 4, 5, and 6, love actually, but I'm not a fan of episode 9, and I will say episode 8 has. I've soured on it. When I first saw it,
same.
I really liked it. I didn't like it as much as 7, but I really liked The Last Jedi, and I forgave some of this. I hated the Canto Bite thing, the casino play, and the horses. I was just like, what the fuck? But there's Ewoks, so what are you gonna do? But and I liked the message at the end of just like, oh, okay, so episode 9 is going to be like all the people, it's not a Skywalker story.
It was so refreshing that she was a nobody.
Yeah.
It was great. That part I loved. I loved that idea. I loved what you're saying, when I watched that, I remember liking it, except even during watching it, I was like, this casino thing feels long and unnecessary.
Yeah.
In retrospect, even now, I really only have three main criticisms. The biggest one by far is, I get that he was trying to do something different. I still feel like that was not the Luke I wanted, right? But that's just because I have a golden little place in my heart for Luke.
Yeah, and so do I.
Yeah.
I would argue more than you do, actually.
Probably. Maybe.
Because I was cognizant enough to watch Star Wars Episode 4 in the theater.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it at the age of 6.
You're like, that's me.
I went at Halloween when I was 8 as Luke Skywalker by dressing up in my older brother's karate gi, and I found a stick in the woods that looked like a laser gun,
right?
And I was Luke Skywalker,
right.
And so it was a huge deal to me. And when people started talking about how Han Solo was cool, I'm like, fuck you, Luke Skywalker's the fucking man. Han's, he's got some issues. So for me, when I saw Episode 8, I was confused, kind of. But I was on board. I was even okay with the silliness of having bombers in space that drop bombs in a zero-G.
Yeah, I don't mind any of that. None of that stuff.
And that sort of stuff, I'm just like, yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, there's a lot of silliness.
Like I said, the only three things that bother me. One, the Luke. And I can go more on to specifically why. But the second one was the casino sequence. Again, I thought it was unnecessary. And then the third one was, it didn't bother me when I saw it, but then afterwards when I heard the arguments against, I'm like, oh yeah, that's stupid. It was the light speed crashing into the Star Destroyer. I was like, okay, that does break everything, because why didn't they just always do that even against the Death Star?
Yeah.
But all they needed to do is like, well, of course you can't do that because of one dumb reason.
Yeah, but I've always had almost every Star Wars, or a lot of Star Wars properties, you could say that about, like Episode 7, when they create a planet-sized Death Star that can blow up other planets in other solar systems.
That's true. It's true. And Return of the Jedi, it's like, okay, let's build another Death Star. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. So, there are, things that, but the central story of Episode 8, if resolved well in Episode 9, would have been okay. As Kylo is like, it's trying to rhyme with Empire, right?
That's why.
So with Darth, as he's trying to get Luke to join him, you're trying to rhyme that with that. And I thought that the way Kylo was written, it was hasty, but it felt believable. He was trying. He didn't like his oppressor. It was sort of a new version of a Sith, and it actually, in the moment, I could kind of believe that Rey would kind of wonder, like, okay, we could make it a better. You just killed the bad guy, and you and I have a family now. That whole thing, And so I kind of felt it. Since watching Episode 9, though, and seeing how and I don't want to go over it, but just how horrible that movie is and how bad the writing is.
It sours 8,
and it makes 8 look ridiculous to me. And now when I watch or I see scenes from 8. I can't stand that movie.
Yeah. It's why the way it's almost identical to what I explained. It's the same thing with The Matrix for me, which was that I love Matrix 1, still do. Matrix 2, when I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that was cool. It's more, bigger, better. And then by the time I saw Matrix 3, not only did I not like Matrix 3, but then I was like, oh, now I don't care about Matrix 2.
Right.
Because now everything that I thought was interesting is irrelevant.
Right.
So never mind.
Yeah.
This one's even worse because 9 was so bad.
Yeah.
That you were like, yeah, I want nothing to do with this.
Yeah, right. So anyway, getting back to Heather from Madison, she says, watching Elder Luke in the newer movies, his exhaustion and resignation just resonated with me as a trans. What does she say? I'm trying to go back to what she said.
Trans mother of one,
polyamorous trans. Yeah. The system he inherited was broken, but the pieces he had were valuable. He felt like a failure because he felt alone. Yeah. Putting it all together felt monumental. I guess that is kind of resonant, right? Just how alone Luke was.
Yep.
That's what my entire life has felt like. The difference is we aren't alone. My therapist recently said, acknowledgement without action is resignation. And that motivated me to keep fighting to build a better system. Acknowledgement without action is resignation. I'm trying to go back to school to be a therapist, and it's hard. But being able to help people build a better world is vital. I'm so thankful to your team for showing so many ways that we can be better together. The breakthroughs that you have been able to record with people who care about each other is so meaningful. Actually, she says, is so meaningful. Y'all are amazing, truly. I'm probably going to occasionally send thankful blurbs like this, which don't particularly have a question. Deal with it, she says. Berto, what do you say?
I'm offended. Frankly, I'm offended that I'm offended. Yeah, no, that's really touching, and it goes back to things we've talked about before, which is that, like, the reason I think we enjoy doing this, other than we're friends, it's fun to talk, is that this psychology is life, and we're talking about things that affect us personally, affect our society, and so if it helps someone out there deal with their life, that's like, you just couldn't ask for more. That's amazing.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break, and we get back one more email. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, this next email is from YouTube member Lozzie Queen. She says, what's the proper way to honor your loved ones who've committed suicide? The news about Twitch's wife and family sparks this question. End of email. Do you know who Twitch is?
No.
So, Stephen Twitch Boss, Twitch is the handle. He was a well-known dancer, choreographer, actor, and television producer, according to Wikipedia.
Okay.
And he died by suicide in 2022.
Oh.
His wife, Allison Holker, she recently released a memoir about her relationship with Twitch and his death. The book was a memoir about how much she loved Twitch, and also about, from my understanding, and also about the struggles that he was going through. A lot of the fans of Twitch were really interested in this book because it describes behind the scenes kind of stuff that people didn't know about, right? So the book also contains very personal details, including information about his drug abuse and the possibility that Twitch having been sexually abused in his childhood.
Oh.
And after the book came out, a lot of fans were enjoying or appreciating the book. But Twitch's family have made statements that they feel that releasing some of this information was not appropriate.
Oh.
Allison Hawker has responded to the criticism, stating that her intent was to help others that may be going through similar things. So, Berto, so Lozzie Queen is saying, was it okay or appropriate or a good idea for Allison to release this memoir as a part of her own grief process or a part of her own honoring of Twitch? Or is the family right for saying, why are you just airing his dirty laundry against he didn't necessarily want this out there? What do you think, Berto?
That's a hard one. And this is his wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Like, legally, I imagine that there's nothing illegal about what she did.
I
don't
assume
know.
not.
Because, she technically owns, I mean, who knows? But whatever.
Even if he wasn't dead, I'm pretty sure you can tell your own story as long as you're not libeling.
But she released, okay. So I'm just going to think about it from the perspective of, is it okay? Like, what if, in this case, he died from suicide, but what if it was just anything, right? Like, what if someone just dies, they got hit by a car or whatever, and the significant other releases information that's personal information that the family feels that person would have never wanted to have released.
Yeah.
So I think there is an ethical thing, some sort of criteria here at stake, because, like, if you feel that the person really wouldn't have wanted this out, then you might owe it to them as a loved one to not. But I can understand the other perspective, which is, I think, and this person was the wife, they might have had way more conversations throughout the years. So they might have a different perspective that they think, yeah, I know he was suffering, but trust me, like he would have wanted to help others because, in which case like that might make sense. So you don't really know which side he would have landed on. It's possible that he was like, yeah, of course, I'm not even going to be around, so please help others. Or he could have been like, no, that's embarrassing. Please don't do it. We don't know. Ultimately, I'm going to say, I don't think, it doesn't sound terrible to me what she did.
Yeah, I don't know what was in the book, so I can't speak on
But
it.
I could definitely see, at the very least, it's really fraught because the family's already lost a loved one, and it sounds like maybe she didn't consult them or give them a heads up. And yeah, it's a tough one. I would net out on like, I don't think it's inherently wrong. It sounds like it was done for a good reason, but I also don't think it's a slam dunk. Like if it were me, right? Like if someone I loved was in this situation and now I had this thought in my head of like, ooh, maybe I can release this information that might help others. I would think twice about it. I would think twice because
Why would you not release it?
Because first of all, I don't have proof it's going to help others. It's just my thought that it might. But it was like their personal thoughts, their personal information.
What's the harm?
Well, let's take it explicitly. If in their will they said, "Don't release this," right?
Presumably,
Yeah.
that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, let's say that it's not in the will, but they had said like, "Oh, I hope this never gets out."
Let's presume that's not the case. What's the harm?
I don't know. There is some. Okay, fine. So there's some cases where I could do harm, right? Like where I could say, yes, the person is gone, so there's no direct harm to them because they're dead, but I'm going to go ahead and donate their money to a bad cause. So even though it's not harming them, it is harming the world because I'm donating their money to a bad cause. In this case, supposedly I'm doing something good because hopefully I am helping people.
But even if you're not, maybe, as you said, how would you know? What's the harm?
Well, that's why I was saying, like, there's some examples where you could say, well, no, but you're donating to a bad cause, so that's the harm.
But
right?
I'm saying,
yeah,
there's no harm. There's no assured harm, or there's no assured benefit, and there's no.
Well, you're harming the family, right? Because they're hurt. So there is some harm. Now, maybe it's a necessary harm, or maybe it's a harm that it's not there. Like, that's too bad that they're hurt, but you still are in your rights to do. But there is some harm because the family feels hurt about it.
Yeah, I don't know what was in the book, but if it's just a general memoir and it is talking about Twitch's struggles and it's not lying and it's not liable, what did they say? It's
Liable.
It's not, implicating other people in the family or something as committing a crime or something, then I am absolutely fine with it. I don't know how I would feel if I had a family member that did something like this. I mean, maybe I would have a problem with it personally, but in terms of ethics and morals, she's his wife and she can tell her and his story. It's just information. Now, what do people do with it? If people take, let's say that she has a bias, like she doesn't like his family or something, and there's stuff in there that's like, my husband would talk about how he didn't want to hang out with his family because they're so annoying or whatever, something. Yeah. And let's say that she has a bone to pick or she's a little biased, but she's not lying. She's just like exaggerating or emphasizing. And if Twitch were alive, he'd be like, well, yeah, but that's not the bigger picture. I loved my family, but sure, I would complain about them. So, let's say there's something like that. Well, it's up to the reader to not just accept that someone's memoir is like straight down the middle, 100% truth, right? But I think someone should be absolutely allowed to tell their story, especially in a situation like this. But even if they just wanted to tell their story, honestly, even if they're not having the intent of trying to help people that have that situation, I just think that people are allowed to tell their goddamn story.
Allowed is completely right, Especially, I don't know of any laws that would prevent it. I think if the question was, is it right that she did it, or is it always right? That's where it gets a little more gray for me.
But the harm that we could imagine, that I think you're mulling over, is potentially wrong. You know, it's sort of like, let's say that Twitch was bisexual and no one knew that. And the wife publicizes this and the family is like upset and fans are upset. Well, fuck the fans and fuck the family. Who cares if he was bisexual? Like, that's on you. Sure. If this harms you, if this harms your vision of Twitch, then that's your problem. That doesn't have anything to do with his bias. Even if Twitch would have said, I didn't want that to get out there. Like, that's a harm that is not. That's other people's fault. It's not.
I could buy that example, but you could imagine an example where, let's say that Twitch had verbally insulted and really mistreated his, I don't know, uncle in the last couple of years of his life. But the uncle still loves him. He knew that he was struggling, so whatever. So this all comes out. And so now people think, oh man, Twitch was actually like complete jerk to his uncle. I could see his uncle maybe being like, why'd you do that? That was not, he was suffering. I never felt that it was, whatever, right? So you could see the uncle could maybe suffer from that.
Yeah, and I would, and I, you know, case by case, but it's up to the reader and the family to work that out. And then the uncle can tell his story. I just don't think that suppression of information is the answer.
Yeah, but I also don't think everyone's information has to be made public at all times.
No, but she can certainly tell her,
She's in the
her
rights.
story.
She's in the rights. I see some gray area.
And that discomfort, or like, hey, you need to have some decorum or whatever, is often used by the oppressor. It's often used by the power structure. And I don't know about this scenario. I didn't even know who Twitch was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had heard about something along those lines. For some reason, I thought Twitch was like a gamer or something, but I mean, not because of the Twitch name, but anyway. So
that would have been my guess too.
That does it for that episode of Psychology Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself. Because
I step on your lines and you deserve it.